Hello, you beautiful people. Today I wanted to talk about 5 players that could win you guys your fantasy playoffs. So some of these will be for guys who are struggling to catch up to the top teams in their league, and others will be for guys who are those top teams in their leagues to ensure that you guys get the win. So like I said, these are going to be very conditional suggestions, so make sure you guys watch to the end to make sure you don't miss out on any of the players, because I really think that they're going to make the difference for you guys this fantasy season. And as always, if you enjoy the content, feel free to drop a like on the video and subscribe if you want to so you get notifications for all the future videos. But with that being said, let's just go ahead and get right into the first player on our list today. So the first player on our list is quite possibly the most hated player in fantasy basketball right now. I know he is for me personally, and it's going to be Jaren Jackson Jr. And if you're like me, you've been stashing this dude on your IR since the start of the season because he said he was going to be back soon, and then he wasn't, and now the report is that he's going to be back by the end of April. And here's the thing. I only think you should pick up Jaren Jackson Jr. is if you're like in playoffs already, but you're not like one of the top 2 teams. Because if you're not one of the top 2 teams and you don't think you have a great chance of winning, you're going to need to do anything you can to make sure that you can compete with these guys. And Jaren Jackson Jr. is just the risk factor that you might want to take if you're really going to try to compete this year. Now, like I said, if I was a top team in my league, I would not touch Jaren Jackson Jr. It's just not worth it if you're pretty sure you're going to win right now. But if you're someone that really needs to get a win, then I think Jaren Jackson Jr. has the potential to really swing fantasy playoffs for you. Like if he comes back and goes on a really good stretch, like he has the potential to do, then that could really impact a playoff series. And yeah, I mean, that's just something that you're really going to want to look into because it is a big risk. Like I fully understand if you're not comfortable picking up JJJ because he has been out for the entire season. But if you really want to compete for a title in your fantasy league, then you're going to need to do whatever it takes. And that might include taking a chance on someone that hasn't played yet this season just because he might end up being a really good ad in the long term. But yeah, that's going to do it for JJJ, and let's go ahead and get into the next player. And if picking up JJJ didn't hurt you enough again, then the next player that I think you might want to pick up is Kyrie Irving. And this is a very similar situation to JJJ. I would only recommend picking up Kyrie Irving if you are one of the teams that isn't a top 2 team in your league, because we all know the risk of Kyrie resting games. He might sit out, he might go on a personal leave. We don't really know with Kyrie, and that's what I mean. He's a huge unknown, he's a huge risk factor, but if you really want to compete for a title, if Kyrie has a good stretch of games going into that last week, he can like single-handedly win you a playoff series. Like I'm that confident in Kyrie's ability to be honestly a borderline top 10 fantasy player. And that's just something that you can't pass on. You can definitely buy low on Kyrie as well, which is a great feature about him, is just because you could give up, I don't know, like 2 mediocre players and just sort of sell the fact that Kyrie is going to be resting games. And then if he's on like a good team in your league or a bad team in your league, they're going to be like, well, I don't want to deal with Kyrie resting games, missing games, taking time off. And if you're really risking it all, then you're going to be comfortable taking that chance because it's really just going to pay off for your team in the long run. And Kyrie Irving is someone that I would definitely recommend picking up if you're trying to compete with the top 2 teams in your league right now. And next up, so I'm not just repeating myself, this is someone that I think you should trade for in any league, no matter what your team's looking like, if you're in first place or last place. I think Michael Porter Jr. is someone that I want on my team more than any other player in the league right now, just because I think he's about to go nuclear with Jamal Murray out. He's now the solidified number 2 option on the Nuggets. And this kid is a talented scorer. Like, I predicted that I thought he would be a top, like, the leading scorer in the league one day. But I didn't think he'd be this efficient this early on into his career. I mean, he is leading the league in efficiency, I think, with Gobert for, like, the past month or so. And, yeah, I mean, the dude's literally built like a mini KD at this point in his career with his scoring ability. He's just rising up over everyone, and I think he's just a really solid player for the future. But in terms of his fantasy, I mean, you're going to want someone that's taking that many shot attempts, scoring at that efficient of a rate going into the playoffs. And I think now is like your best time to get him, because once he goes on the hot stretch that I'm anticipating him going on with Murray being out, it's really going to be hard to buy low on him. And I know a lot of trade deadlines are tomorrow, so this might be your last chance to get MPJ on your team. The Nuggets have a good playoff schedule as well, which definitely helps the case for picking up Michael Porter Jr., and I don't think it's a chance that you should pass up on. Obviously, I wouldn't call him a buy low option, like evidently, because he has been playing really well, but I just think his production is really going to jump up to the next level with Murray being gone, so that's why I think you should trade for him. So I guess we can call him a buy low with parentheses around it, because I really think his production is going to be like top 25 fantasy player the rest of the season. So if you made it this far into the video, I'm going to go ahead and assume you're pretty serious about fantasy basketball, and if that's the case, then I'd recommend joining the Discord through the link in the description. It's a really good place if you want to talk about waiver wire pickups, trade suggestions, anything NBA related, honestly, so I definitely recommend checking that out. But the next player on our list, and it really sucks to say, is going to be Zach LaVine. And as we all know, he just entered the league's health and safety protocols due to a Rona, maybe exposure, maybe he has it. I believe he probably has it because he's going to be missing an extended period of time. And if you're one of the top 2 teams in your league right now, then just go ahead and pick up Zach LaVine, because you're probably going to be making it to your finals. And once Zach LaVine is healthy again, he's just going to go nuclear. Like, he was on a really good stretch. He was finally figuring it out with Vucevic. They got used to each other's playing style, and it was really translating to some good fantasy numbers for him. And then, of course, this shitty thing happens, but he's going to be missing maybe the first week or so of fantasy playoffs. So if you were one of the worst teams in your league, I wouldn't really recommend trading for him, because no point in having him on your team if you get beat out in the first round. But if you're a top 2 team in your league, maybe even top 3, and you're pretty confident you're going to make it to the second round of playoffs, definitely Zach LaVine is someone you're going to want to target, because he's such a talented fantasy player, and he can really take your team to the next level come playoff time. So yeah, this is an ideal time to buy low on him, because if he's on a team that's really struggling to make the playoffs, where they have a rough first round matchup, they're not going to be able to have him on their roster. So you can definitely buy low on Zach LaVine, and he's someone that can really help secure a W come playoff time. So great time to buy low on Zach LaVine if you're a really good team in your league. And the last player on our list is going to be Yusef Nurkic. And for some reason, Nurkic is still on a lot of waiver wires. He's only rostered in about 66% of leagues on ESPN Fantasy, and that's just way too low for Nurkic. I don't know why people are forgetting how good of a fantasy player he was. And when his minutes start getting up, and he's coming off a minutes restriction, man. Like, Nurkic's numbers are going to be really good when he gets fully healthy again. He was a really good player 2 seasons ago on fantasy, and I think a lot of people are underestimating the impact he's going to have. So if he's on your waiver wire for some reason, I would definitely recommend picking him up. And if he's not on your waiver wire, then I'd recommend buying low on him. This is like if you're the best team in your league, if you're the worst team in your league, Nurkic is just someone that I'd want to have come playoff time, because you're going to be able to buy extremely low on him, and I think he's a really good ad. And yeah, he probably is the person that I get asked about the most, other than Jaren Jackson Jr., in terms of if people should drop them or pick them up. But I'm on the side of picking up both of them conditionally, like I said. Just if you really need to take your team to the next level to compete in the fantasy playoffs, then these are the guys that are really going to be able to do that, because they might be sneaking under the radar and being criminally undervalued by a lot of people in your league. But yeah, with that being said, that's going to wrap up the video. Thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Leave your guys' suggestions for players that you think people need to have on their teams come playoff times in the comments below. And as always, I hope you guys all have a great rest of your day.